Welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. And, I got to give a quick shout out to the Philadelphia Union for giving just a tiny bit of news while I was away on vacation in Orlando, Florida, as José Nuñez was away on a work trip out on the West Coast. And the Union, Jose and I could not have planned that any better with not making us work as hard while, Jose's actually doing his actual job. And, I'm trying to enjoy myself, or at least attempt to enjoy myself in the freezing cold and pouring down rain down in Florida. But regardless, Union come out hot this week with a whole bunch of news. MLS starts off the week hot with a whole bunch of news. And who better than join me than, once again, José Nuñez. Jose, how you doing?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. Tired. It's been a long day. A lot of stuff going on in my life, both personally and work life. So excited to sort of unplug from real life for a few, an hour and change. I know we always say about an hour, but Jesus, we always go over it. So I'm just happy to be talking about anything else. And the Union's the perfect topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said there in the intro, I don't know. I think you and I would both agree. We were talking prior that we fully expected that there was going to be a ton of news while we were both away, and that really wasn't the case. I think I did an article for Bradley Cornell's pre-match game before they played AGF, and slacked a little bit. Probably should have done a post-game match report, since thank you, Jose, for giving me a link to watching that game. And both of us chopped up some clips and got the people informed on social media that did not get the link for that game. And of course, we'll obviously talk about that game, as you guys can see in the show descriptions. We'll talk about the preseason. We'll talk about Jack McGlynn with the national team. We'll talk about Eddy Davis's reported first team deal. And then obviously the big news today was the U.S. Open Cup is coming back. And I'm sure people in the comments, people that are not listening to this live, are going to have a lot of thoughts about the U.S. Open Cup. But real quick, going back to Jack McGlynn, and we'll obviously talk about that a little bit. But as Michael says right here, he says, Disney looked wet and great pictures though, Todd. Yeah, Disney was extremely wet, extremely cold. 5 out of the 8 days that I was down there, it rained. It sucked, and it was in the high 40s, low 50s majority of the time there. And I usually go to Florida in January, and yeah, this was the coldest, wettest that it had ever been for me down there. And while I was down there, I did actually get to go to the U.S. men's national team game at Exploria Stadium, or Inter.Inco. I refuse to call it that new name. It's always going to be Exploria for me, just like some people for the podcast. It's always going to be PPL Park. But yeah, regardless, Exploria, fantastic stadium. Didn't really get to do too much. It was so windy there, and at least I wasn't getting rained on, which was nice. But for people who haven't been to that stadium, the corners of the stadium are open, and so you're just getting constant wind gusts blowing onto you. And yeah, that sucked. That wasn't fun. But yeah, getting to go to that game and see Jack McGlynn play 45 minutes, and it was pretty cool too, where I got my tickets. I was sitting in the family section, so that was pretty neat too. The family section of the players on the field, so that was pretty cool. And near Caden Clark's family, and he came on, scored on his debut. And so, watching how excited that they got, it kind of made me emotional, right? And you've kind of changed my opinion, right, Jose, where people look down on January camp and think it's a joke and whatnot. And sure, I definitely hear the arguments. I understand why people feel that way. Sure, I felt that way. But, seeing Caden Clark's family celebrate, it's a reminder. It's like you put in all that hard work as a young kid to finally get to this moment, and maybe he never does get another call-up for the national team. But look, nobody can take away that goal that he scored against Costa Rica on Wednesday. And it's a big moment for him in his career, for his family's career. And, these are moments that are going to stay with these people forever. And so I do think that that's something that fans that maybe look down on the January camps, it's a big opportunities for these people. And yeah, that was pretty cool just seeing how excited Caden's family was for when he scored. But Jack McGlynn, Jose, a goal and an assist. makes his first ever start with the U.S. national team against Venezuela. Fantastic January camp, I would say, for Jack McGlynn. I think overall for the national team, I think this was a great January camp. And I saw some comments on social media saying this is the best January camp a lot of people can remember in a long time.
Yeah, if anything, it all went according to plan, I would think, for the union in a way, right? In terms of maybe showcasing someone who may or may not fit in the plans going forward, right? And maybe there was a lot of very positive glimpses of it maybe working this past game against AGF in Spain, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But no, an exciting camp for him. I'm so happy for him. I'm so happy for his family. I know that, it's been a difficult decision trying to figure out what to do in terms of who to represent. It's no secret anymore, or hasn't been for a while, that the Republic of Ireland has knocked at the door and wanting to get him involved. As I understand it, November was a big push that they made for the games against England and Finland. But yeah, all around a great camp. It was almost crazy, right? He started that first game just sort of missing some passes, just looked a little shaky, and next thing you know, he turned it up, and obviously the goal was unbelievable. Not quite as good as what he did against Washington, against DC United, but nonetheless, an incredible goal. But I think this raises more questions for him, and I'm eager to talk to him at some point before March, because I'm sure that when March, the international window comes and the U.S. have to play the CONCACAF Nations League, whether he gets called or not, I don't know. But if all things remain true and maybe the Republic of Ireland calls him up, there's 2 games against Bulgaria, 1 home, 1 away. That would be a senior cap for that country, and making things all that much more difficult for him and honestly the United States. So I wonder if the U.S. doesn't come, does he just go ahead and take the Republic of Ireland call? And maybe that was, the last hurrah for him with the American colors. Who knows? But he's in a imagine having the opportunity to choose technically between the United States and the Republic of Ireland. How cool would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to have a chance to play for multiple countries. And look, I mean, the U.S. thrives on that with getting so many players in this system that aren't, necessarily born in America. And for Jack McGlynn to have that opportunity to potentially play for Ireland if he so chooses, if that is what he ultimately winds up doing, regardless, I mean, I think that's a fantastic opportunity for any player to represent your national team. And even if this is potentially the last that we see of Jack McGlynn with the U.S. national team, I mean, look, like I said about Caden Clark, nobody can take away Jack McGlynn's goal with the U.S. national team. His first ever start, played the 90 minutes against Venezuela, played 45 minutes against Costa Rica in a 3-0 victory. I mean, yeah, a lot to be excited for Jack McGlynn with how he represented himself for America, for himself, his family, and the Philadelphia Union. And Mike brings up a good point right here. He says, sorry, that is not the comment. A lot of comments here by Mike right here. Says, shot window for Jack earns his pleas for his sale prospects. And yeah, I'm sure, that is probably part of it, right? Is whenever you're playing at the highest level, which, some may or may not argue that the national team is that. I think anytime a player represents a national team, that's a pretty big deal. And Jack McGlynn had a huge window, and a lot of players for the U.S. did. I look at a player like Patrick Agyemang for Charlotte, where his story, I wasn't familiar with it until I started seeing people post about it. Played high school ball in Division III, and then obviously eventually winds up at Rhode Island, I believe it was, and then gets drafted by Charlotte and had himself a huge January camp with the U.S. And people were talking about, what players do you think Pochettino should call in for those next call-ups? And I think Patrick Agyemang needs to be one of those players. I think Diego Luna definitely made a name for himself here, breaking his nose, blood coming down, and what Pochettino said after the game that he had big balls or something like that. I mean, Yeah, a lot of positives to take out of this January camp. And look, even Brian White, a former Philadelphia Union Academy player, scores. And a lot of Philadelphia Union ties. A little bit disappointed that I didn't get to see Matt Freese get the start. I wish we would have seen Matt Freese, but Zach Steffen played good against Costa Rica. That was a really, really bad Costa Rican team. But look, they had opportunities that, you know, they created, even though the U.S. probably shouldn't have given up. And, when he was called upon, he made big saves. And there's another PA native, a guy who played with the Union junior teams at one point or another. And yeah, I mean, a lot of Philadelphia Union connections for this January camp, and a lot to be proud of. But yeah, Jack McGlynn raising his price tag. I think, it didn't hurt.
Yeah, I was gonna say racing his stock. He certainly didn't hurt his potential wherever he may go, if he goes anywhere. Obviously, the January transfer window is quickly closing for a lot of places, or I should say the winter transfer window is closing for a lot of places. Other places are staying open a little bit longer, though the ones that would seem the most likely for Jack, I think, would close. I think, is it the 31st? I don't even know anymore. I know some of these windows change here and there, but nonetheless, the time's running out for the winter window for these teams. And the last point I'll bring in terms of, the potential of Jack switching allegiances to representing the Republic of Ireland. Do you know who's the coach for the Republic of Ireland?
It's not Robbie Keane. No, he's
No,
with.
it's not. It is
it?
Andre Blake and Damian Lowe's former Jamaica coach. Hamir, what's it, Hamir Halgrimsson? So he's out there, and I just wonder if there has been some text messaging back and forth between the Jamaicans and I don't know what relationship they had or how they left off. Obviously, it all sort of just happened so quickly after that Nations League defeat. But I wonder if Jack has sort of asked questions about him and, what was it like playing under him, et cetera, et cetera. So just something to keep an eye on, that there's another connection there that, maybe at work or at play in terms of, maybe bringing this over the line. I have no information whatsoever. I don't touch that type of stuff. But I really do think that there's a world where Jack McGlynn, by November 16th, say he remains with the Philadelphia Union, he would have faced, should he get called up by Ireland and actually accepted, he would play against Bulgaria twice, play against Daniel Gasek if he gets called up in Hungary, Armenia, potentially Portugal or Denmark once again, and then Hungary one more time. So those are some pretty decent teams, especially when you start thinking of like Portugal or Denmark potentially playing against at the national level. So I don't know. That seems super enticing to me if I was a professional player, especially considering that many would probably say, I don't think that this is the sentiment I share or maybe you share, but that the jump to Europe should have already happened. Nonetheless, this would be a great opportunity for him to move on to represent somewhere where honestly he can probably just get called in every single international match window.
Yeah, I think he would. And last thing I'll touch on is Mike says if Jack thinks he has a shot into the US, he isn't switching. And
Of course.
yeah, of course. I mean, that's a fair point. But I think the question is, and I think for a lot of these players, right, that maybe, have dual nationality where they can go for either team, the World Cup's coming right around. And yeah, Jack McGlynn's a young player, 21 years old. And so there will, fingers crossed, be plenty of opportunities for World Cups in his future. But a lot of these players, they may look at this like, this might be my only opportunity to play in a World Cup. And a lot of players will see them, whatever team, whatever chance they have of playing at a World Cup, they'll take that opportunity. And so we'll see what happens with Jack McGlynn. Staying in Europe, though, and that is the Philadelphia Union have wrapped up their preseason camp in Marbella, Spain, 2-week training stint. They played against Slavia, Prague, and AGF. I'm not even going to attempt to say their proper name, the Danish club. But yeah, thankfully, we have people like you, Jose, that's able to track down this information and find out where these games are being streamed. And you let the people be informed. And if people wanted to take the opportunity to pay for the stream like this past Sundays against AGF, or getting a VPN against Slavia Prague, then the opportunity was there. And I know a lot of fans, and we feel the same way. The union should just stream the game themselves, put it out there. It shouldn't have to take all this Google translating to find out this information. But nonetheless, look, there was 2 opportunities to watch the Philadelphia Union in Marbella, Spain, and the Union came away with 0 wins, 1 goal in those 2 games. And that leads me to my question, and it's the title of tonight's show. Who impressed during the training camp in Spain? And I did not get to watch much of the Slavia Prague game at all, watch all of the AGF games, so I can talk a little bit more about that than I can the Slavia game. But overall, Jose, just looking at these 2 games, what players stood out to you the most in these 2 games? Obviously, we couldn't see what was going on in training, but we did have game.
Yeah, I think I would provide the context for both games a little bit to maybe help shape the picture a little bit more in terms of, as I understand it, and obviously it was a little Google Translate. I don't speak whatever language they speak in the Czech Republic. I guess it's just Czech. But I guess there was a virus that went around, and a stomach virus, that some players weren't feeling well. So the lineup that started and the lineup that ended up playing the second half, et cetera, was affected by that, where some guys could only give so much and some other guys were just completely out. Nonetheless, this is a team in terms of Slavia that ended up going to, or this weekend, I think they go on and play their Europa League game, or I guess at some point this week. So still a quality side. So that was a good game. AGF, they started with the lineup that finished their previous game, which was their B lineup, which may probably shape the idea onto, the Union were in the front foot. Well, I think it was their B team, if I recall. So just sort of putting that out there too, from listening to some of the interviews leading to the game from their coach, who thank goodness speaks English and not
He's
Danish.
A German coach, right?
Yeah, it's a German coach. So for me, I think if we're looking at the big picture, I was really impressed with Glavinovic, Ian, whatever you want to call him. I can't wait to speak with him. I put in the request to sit down with him for 25, 30 minutes and do a longer interview for everybody. I thought he looked fantastic in his 38 minutes against Slavia. Again, that's a true quality opponent that I was even shocked that they even took the opportunity to play against the Union. I would also say that I was really impressed with Frankie Westfield starting both games and playing major minutes in both games. Now, don't want to take anything away from him because you can only play what's in front of you and you can only fill in the holes that are available to you. But Nate Harriel was not available for whatever reason. I'm guessing maybe a minor knock or something. I'm not sure. But nonetheless, Frankie stepped in, did his best, could probably work in his distribution a little bit more, but he looked dangerous. He looked like he wanted to get stuck in, wanted to be physical, which is great. And I think Bradley Cornell said it best, right? Like when they're that young, they don't realize the challenges ahead and they just go on and just do it. They don't overthink it, which is awesome. And then I was also impressed with Neil Pierre. Neil Pierre looked very good for everything that he played for against Slavia, and some flashes of good to great, and also some flashes of not so good against AGF. So you take the good with the bad. He's still a very young kid who's playing against some serious talent, especially when he came in against what I guess was the A team for AGF. He did well, and again, he's probably taking in so much information that it's just a lot. So I do wonder what they're gonna do in terms of Glassness, because those first 5 minutes of Glassness against AGF were fascinating, where he almost passed it to the wrong guy, and they almost got literally turned the ball over 2 yards away from the 18-yard box. So I do wonder still if he is healthy. I'm no doctor, I'm no medical professional, but it just, ever since that hernia injury or whatever it was, that surgery, was it 2023, Todd, when he had that?
Yeah,
2023. Ever since then, it just has felt like he hasn't been the same. It was leading into the playoffs, if I recall, after he broke the record. So I don't know if he truly is healthy. I'm sure he would tell you that he is, but I don't know. How about you? What from what you saw? Obviously, you mentioned that you didn't get to watch much, if any, of the Slavia game. It was tough with the VPN. I think it was working for some with it, some with it. Not, I mean, sorry. It was working with some with the VPN. It was working. It was not working for some with the VPN, and it was working with people with no VPN whatsoever in Pennsylvania, or like myself in Seattle. Like, it made no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, you're right. It made absolutely zero sense for why it wasn't working. But regardless, still got to watch at least one preseason game, so I'm happy. And again, thank you, Jose, for giving me the hookup, so I was able to watch that. But yeah, I think you hit on Frankie Westfield, and I would say for me, he's number one who stood out for me, and yeah, takes advantage of a situation where yeah, Olivier Bazo has a little bit of a knee injury. He was only able to play 15 minutes between the two games. Nate Harriel, who knows why he missed this game. But look, Frankie Westfield takes advantage of whatever opportunity was given to him, starts both the games. We saw him at right back. We saw him at center back. A very versatile player. And I know at least under Jim Curtin, if you could play multiple positions, you had a chance of playing more frequently. And so I gotta imagine, Bradley Cornell's a coach that enjoys having a player that's versatile and players that can play in multiple different positions. I mean, look, you had a 4-4-2 diamond formation against Slavia, and then this game against AGF, the Union played a 4-2-3-1, and I don't think this formation looked great. If I'm being honest, the Union didn't create a ton of chances, only one chance in the second half. And you mentioned it. AGF started what seemed to be their B squad to start this game against the Unions, maybe as close as you can get, starting 11. And yeah, they, of course, score a goal with Quinn Sullivan, a little bit of a scrappy goal. Jesus Bueno corner kick gets not cleared away good enough. Kai Wagner keeps the play alive with a header into Quinn Sullivan, and then Quinn hits it off of the right post and then bounces off of the goalkeeper's head and winds up going in the back of the net. And yeah, there was pretty much it for any real standout chances for the Union to create. The second half, you get one chance created by a Chris Donovan header attempt. The goalie spills it. Alejandro Bedoya is there to get to the ball, but the goalkeeper just beats Bedoya. And yeah, that's how the game ended. And yeah, I would argue, yeah, it's disappointing to see not a ton of chances created in a 4-2-3-1. You see Mikau Ura start up top as a single striker. I don't think that's his best position. I think you want to get him running end line to end line, getting in behind the strikers. You don't really want to use him as a hold up striker. And I know we saw a similar situation a few years ago with Kasper Shibilko. That wasn't his game plan either, just being the lone striker up top. It really took him out of the game as well. And at times Daniel Gazak did get a little bit higher off the field, and this formation, you could see even at times it looked like a 4-5-1. It looked, a 4-4-2, but for majority of that game, they stayed in that 4-2-3-1 diamond. And I think staying with players that impress, I think that formation did suit Jack McGlynn. There was about a spell of 2 minutes where the Union just had possession in the first half, where it really started with Jack McGlynn just spraying the pass, everybody finding Jack McGlynn, and then his vision just finding his teammates, and they eventually worked the ball to the right side of the field. And unfortunately, the Union weren't able to get a shot on target or get a shot off regardless. But, I look at, okay, there was moments in this formation. Pressing, I think, was a big part too. Jack McGlynn and Kevin Sullivan had a moment in the first half where they both pressed and won the ball back. And I think that's what you're going to see a lot with a Bradley Cornell soccer team, is just winning that ball high up in the opposition's half. And yeah, you saw something similar too with the Philadelphia Union under Jim Curtin, where, they wanted to turn you over within 5 seconds inside your half and then, look to break. And there was also a moment too in this game where both Jacob Glesnes and Alawetu Makanyo both went for the same ball, and that left the Union exposed for a counterattack. Andre Blake comes up big with a save. But yeah, I think there's still a work in progress figuring out how this team wants to play under Bradley Cornell. I expect them to stay with a 4-4-2 diamond. But it was interesting to see them try a different formation, and it didn't go great. And I'll be curious to see, will they stream the game against Cincinnati? I don't have my hopes up high for that, but do they continue to play a 4-2-3-1? Do they go back to that diamond? Ty Brubo, Jan both missed this game because of fatigue. Bradley Cornell told Sage Hurley after the game in her write-up that she had on PhiladelphiaUnion.com. Sal Olives, we're not really sure why he didn't play in this game. Mike Sheridan, he was never going to play during these two games as a fourth choice goalkeeper. And then Olivier Bizot, like I said, had that knee injury. And so 6 players missed the final game. 23 out of the 29 players that traveled did play. But yeah, I mean,
don't forget Eddie, the weirdness behind Eddy Davis going in for 10 minutes.
That's right.
And then coming out. That was bizarre. And then
so weird.
I initially had questioned the Andrew Rick substitution, but then after watching the tape back, it's like, oh, okay, it was 26 minutes. Maybe it was the right time just for a 30-minute spell for him and then give it to Oliver, and that's fine. But the Eddy Davis bit was sort of, he just went in, and I watched those 10 minutes and I'm thinking he really didn't get himself into the game, and it was hard because it was all uphill for them. But that was just a bizarre thing, right? Because everybody else who went in stayed after they were substituted in. There was no substituting a substitute, which is one of the most embarrassing things possible.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, though, I think the worst possible thing to happen in soccer is when you get subbed out in the first half of a game. It's like, wow, you couldn't even make it to halftime and you're already getting subbed out. But yeah, regardless, yeah, only playing about 10 minutes, being a sub, getting subbed out, not a great look, but maybe Bradley Cornell gives more information during the week for that. Who knows? I'm sure, everybody's going to ask about Nathan Harriel because that is on a lot of people's mind. What is going on with Nathan Harriel? I haven't heard anything. You haven't heard anything. And I'd imagine if somebody had heard something, they probably would have been posting about it on social media. But regardless, we got to see. Yeah, that's true. Regardless, we got to see players take advantage of opportunities given, and I think you hit the nail right on the head, Jose. No bigger than Frankie Westfield, but yeah, I think Jack McGlynn for his 45 minutes after traveling all the way from Fort Lauderdale to Spain. Yeah. I mean, he impressed. Oluwatu Makanya started both games, and I'm sure he'll be given opportunities and. I thought he looked fine too, but yeah, those would be the 3 players for me that really stood out. Any thoughts on the Union's formation that they played 4-2-3-1? Do you think that's something that they potentially stay with? Do you think it's because of injuries that they have, players being fatigued, whatnot? That may be part of the reason why Bradley went with that formation.
I'm not sure. I don't know that the players is a reasoning, because he's gonna put everybody through the ringer in terms of this is how I want to play. This is how I want this team to play. This is how Earns has allowed me to teach you all how to play and how we're gonna carry on. Right? If you don't fit in it, you don't belong in it. And sure, he's probably gonna give a lot of leeway for players to get acclimated to it all. It's so different. I mean, Jim Curtin was there for nearly 11 years, right? So, of course, it's going to be so different for all of these players. Never mind other people who they may bring in, or I mean, Glavinovic is probably like, the hell is this? Like, this is very different than what I was playing. I would think it's very different than what he was playing in Argentina, where it's not the crazy speed of closing down. It's more of like, okay, let's get possession, let's swing it around, let's actually play the ball around, et cetera, versus this, no, like my job is literally to clear the ball and hope to press as fast as I can. Like, oh, that's very different. So yeah, I think not necessarily a player, but you could probably quantify it as a character per se is this, or two, is the press at the very front of the spear in terms of the striker or anybody in the attacking side. And just, this is going to be a character all season, and whether they get it right or wrong will determine how well this team will do, because as soon as that press is broken, it's nothing more than a quick switch 40 yards across the field that you can just get sliced and diced. So that's one thing. Also, the communication. There were so many times where I think I saw, Todd, I think you saw it as well, and other people that we chat with, Julian and Kyle, where both center backs were pressing forward to try to cut off a ball. It's like, where's the tilting? Where's the pivoting, the back and forth? It just wasn't there. So these are all growing pains. It is only January 28th. They're a little bit under a month before they play. Can they get it together? Absolutely. One point I want to make a note of, and this was in the FC Cincinnati write-up, FC Cincinnati 2 write-up, is that the game on the 7th of February seems to be, it's going to be, at least from the Cincinnati side, a mixture of their MLS Next Pro and their MLS team players, which I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how that works if there's amateurs within it playing against professionals. I don't know how that all works in terms of safety and contracts, etc. But nonetheless, that's going to be something different. And I have this much hope that it'll be streamed. I think it'll just be an F5 match. That's what I call them, where you just F5 the live feed to try to get something going.
Yeah, that didn't go great last year, if I recall, when these two teams played down in Clearwater. So maybe it's a new season. Maybe that changes. But you're killing it, Jose, with these segues, because you mentioned amateur, and a player that played as an amateur last year was Eddy Davis with Philadelphia Union 2. It's been reported that he is signing as a homegrown. Eddy Davis last year scored 14 goals with Union 2, led the team in goals. Also had 4 assists in 31 appearances and 2,058 minutes played. Scored a goal in the MLS Next Pro final against North Texas. It's a game that Union 2 fans don't want to remember, as Philadelphia Union 2 blew a 2-0 lead. Was previously in the New York Red Bulls Academy. And, last year when seeing this kid play without a Union 2 deal, without a Philadelphia Union deal at all, it's like, wow, you're playing without a contract. I mean, that is so risky. And I don't know, like, if I was a professional player, which I would never be close to being one of those, it's like, I don't know if I could do that. I mean, that to me at least seems like it's career suicide, one potential injury, and that's it. Right. But look, he bet on himself, and it's reported that he's getting a homegrown deal. And that then leads me into a whole bunch of thoughts here. Nelson Pierre's future. We'll play a clip here for a second with Bradley Carnell talking about that last week. Do the Union have enough depth at the striker position now? I think people in the comments are going to say absolutely not. People listening back are going to say absolutely not. But, reportedly, Jose, that Eddy Davis is signing a homegrown deal. Your thoughts on that?
Happy for him. There was, as I think about the timeline here, he had at one point gone to Schalke in Germany and played with their second team, continued with the Union 2. Were there other trials or showcasing of the player? Maybe the other one that I know because I got pictures sent of it was when he was at Lyngby as well, having a trial or a showcase of some sort. And obviously that's a lot easier because of the relationship and whatnot. But no, happy for him. I'm happy for any player who bets on himself and goes ahead and gets a contract. The path is so crowded right now within that academy and the homegrown side that you see Saidi go to San Diego, who I think I would have maybe pegged closer to Eddy, if not higher. If he would, I'm sure he would have played Union 2 this year. Then you have Diego Rosillo, who apparently is declining any type of Union 2 contract, which again, I can't blame him. That's fine. Bet on yourself, especially if it's reported that other MLS teams are jockeying for his rights. Good on you, man. Like, do your best, make him sweat it. But then there's other players in the academy who are also trying to make their way up. So it'll, again, I'm just happy for Eddy. I just hope that, this doesn't become and it's too early to call it this, but get a homegrown and then not come up to nothing per se, right? Like, I hope that he finds a path that makes sense for him. And if that means leaving Philadelphia sooner than he ever expected, do it, man. Just go find where you're wanted. Someone will always want you somewhere at that level. So I wish him luck, and we'll see. If he contributes, fantastic. Can't wait to cover you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Again, you get a deal, and that's huge. And still becoming a part of the MLSPA, I mean, that's a big deal too. So having union representation, not only with the Philadelphia Union, but the actual players' union. Yeah, I mean, it's good on Eddy scoring 14 goals. I mean, teams love goal scorers, and will that translate to the next level in MLS? I mean, that's a huge step up from MLS Next Pro to MLS, and I don't know. I think you probably feel the same way, Jose. I think a lot of people that I've talked to say that, they kind of wish that MLS teams would have stayed in USL Championship just because it's more of a physical league, more of a tougher league that's going to get you more ready quicker than playing in MLS Next Pro. I've had people say that's a glorified U19 league. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of mixed thoughts and mixed opinions on MLS Next Pro. And Eddy took advantage of a situation being the guy for Union 2 and winds up getting reportedly a homegrown deal. And so it's big for him. But again, fans want more. And you talked about how that pathway, how that depth chart, not even with the academy, but the first team in general, it's pretty crowded. And so a few weeks ago, Bradley Carnell was talking about, yeah, that depth. It's so deep right now at the striker position. Then that's part of the reason why Nelson Pierre did not go on the trip to Spain, even though he has a homegrown deal. They opted to take Sal Olivas and Eddy Davis to Spain over Nelson Pierre. And so I followed up last week with a question, and yeah, maybe could have phrased that a little bit better. But Bradley basically said, we'll give you guys an update once we return to Philadelphia.
We're still evaluating with the group that we're working with every single day, right? So right now, Eddy Davis and Marcus Anderson have the nod. We have Sal Olivas with us, and obviously Ty Baribo and Mikel Ua. So we're just evaluating. And regard Nelson, I can't be saying anything on that behalf. So yeah, right now we have these strikers to work with, and we'll evaluate once we get back to Philadelphia. And prepare for Clearwater. And maybe at that point, we have some more information for you.
Yeah, and so maybe we get more information this week. Maybe we get information right before the team heads to Clearwater. But Nelson Pierre, I think, he's in a interesting situation, right, Jose, where he's 19 years old, was loaned out to Sweden in January of 2024, only played 3 games while he was in Sweden, and eventually gets recalled during the summertime and gets loaned out to USL one side, Charlotte Independence, scores 1 goal in 9 appearances and 104 minutes played. Not great numbers, not a lot of minutes played while playing for Charlotte. But you look at his numbers where he was with Union 2 prior, 9 goals, 6 assists, and 48 appearances in 2,291 minutes in 2 seasons with Union 2. And, he strikes me as a player that graduated from that Union 2 level. And we've seen it plenty of times with Philadelphia Union players, a Jeremy Raffanello, a Jesus Bueno, and the list goes on and on and on, where, they put players in this team, in this league, regardless where it's at. And once those players prove that, hey, look, we're too good for this level, Brandon Craig's another one of those players. Then you find loan opportunities. You try to get them minutes with the first team if you can. Yeah, Nelson's a player that just graduated, I believe, from Union 2. And so it's curious, in my opinion, did the Union try to loan him out once again? Do the Union get an offer and sell him? I don't know. The transfer window closes in a couple days, and we'll see. I mean, news has to be coming sooner rather than later. You heard Bradley say it there. He really couldn't comment on the situation. And, this is me speculating. And, to me, I take that as, there's things going on behind the scenes and nothing's finalized yet. And maybe it gets done before the window closes. But Nelson Pierre, I don't think he has a future with this team this season. Just seeing him not go to preseason with the team in Spain, and seeing that they've loaned him out to 2 clubs here in the last year.
Yeah, I had hoped that his story was going to work out with the Union, considering the pedigree of his younger brother. Like, unbelievable physically, right? Like, could have had it all, I guess. I don't know. Has had the opportunity to represent Haiti at the U20 level in the past. He hasn't been able to crack the senior team for obvious reasons. And gosh, imagine having Danley and Nelson represent Haiti at the same time. That'd be kind of cool. But I do wonder if anybody wants him, right? Like, is this sort of like where the team is stuck on a dead contract and they just got to figure out what to do with him? It's too late to be declining options in the sense of, could this have been sort of the same way that Anton Sorensen's contract went, where the union declined the option? So I don't know. Another loan, obviously, the Charlotte one did not work out, and the difficult thing there was that as soon as Nelson joined, gosh, I'm forgetting his name. The main striker for Charlotte,
United. What's his name?
Obregon, which is the Spanish guy, and then Obertan, the former Manchester United player. Both sort of got really, really hot. Where I think it's CJ Obregon or JC Obregon, ended up getting, I think, close to, if not the golden boot for that level of USL, which is unbelievable. So it was tough to, you'd be hard pressed to displace a player who's doing that. So, yeah, I wish the best to him. And this goes back to that conversation that you and and I'm not shy to share it out loud with the group and everybody who listens. But like, what does it mean to be a homegrown anymore? Right? Is it nothing more than a financial mechanism? Whereas when it first started, it was more of a skill level type of thing, right? Where like, Jack McGlynn, Nate Harriel, Brandon Craig. I think that he probably will get a contract with Montreal. At least I hope that he gets a contract there. He played 45 minutes of scoreless soccer against, was it Cincinnati? I think it was Cincinnati. So there's that. Mackenzie, Trusty, the Aronson brothers. Like those are some pretty good names for homegrowns. And now you see some contracts that are coming through for homegrowns that are kind of like, this is an interesting signing, but you just never know. I guess you're just taking a stab, and I guess we could make the same argument about U22 signings, right? And in terms of Weithu Makanya, I get that he's super young and he's got a lot of time to develop, but when you're taking up that coveted spot that gives you so much flexibility financially, it's almost like something that needs to happen right away, not like a third season. So no, I know I rambled a little bit, and I hope I answered your question, but I wish the best to Nelson. I think he'll land somewhere. It'll make sense. I just don't know. I don't think his association with Philadelphia will be for much longer.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I guess the last thing, and we've touched on this a little bit, do the Union have enough striker depth? And so as things stand, it goes Mikael Urum, Ty Baribo, Chris Donovan, Marcus Anderson, Eddy Davis, 5 strikers right there. I would argue that they need another striker. And I go back to what Ernst Tanner said, and I know, the trust seems broken between some people in this fan base and ownership in the front office, and some people are like, yeah, it is what it is. But, Ernst Tanner did come out and say that they will sign players in every single position other than goalkeeper. Now, does that mean that you go out, you get a center back, your defense is secure? Does that mean Eddy Davis is going to be your only attacker? I hope not, and I think this fan base hopes not. But at the same time, too, we did say that's not including their homegrown players. Now, technically, Eddy Davis wasn't a homegrown player last year, so I don't know. I hope not. I think this team does probably need more of an experienced player. And I think Ernst, too, said that they would, if they could, get a hold-up striker. They need another hold-up striker. And, yeah, you definitely need one of those if you are going to play a 4-2-3-1 formation. So I would argue right now the Union don't have enough depth up at the striker position. If they can go ahead and swing a deal and get something done, great. And one thing that is worth reminding fans is MLS's window opens up January 31st. And so they're one of the weird ones where I feel like the majority of the world's transfer window closes up after the 31st, but MLS's goes until February something, I believe it is, maybe March. I don't have the dates up in front of me right now, but yeah, MLS's window opens up on January 31st for the transfer window. And so we'll see. I know this is when the Union are more active towards this time compared to in the summertime. And fans I know are going to be like, yeah, I'll believe it when we see it. But yeah, I don't personally think the Union have enough depth up front, even with the reported signing of Eddy Davis. Anything else you want to hit on this, Jose, before we go into the final topic?
No, to me, it's just interesting that reportedly Eddy Davis has gotten this deal not announced. I know I've reported from my sources the Frankie Westfield and Nelson Pierre U2 turning into homegrown deals. So the Union are technically sitting on 3 homegrown announcements. I feel like maybe this week or next week, once everybody's back and maybe they have media day or whatever, they have their picture or their photo ops or whatever. Maybe we get the signatory Philadelphia, or becomes a signatory Philadelphia Union picture with 3 homegrowns holding a scarf like they did for Brandon Craig, Jack McGlynn, and Nate Harriel right at the stadium. So yeah, that's yet to be announced. But I wholeheartedly agree with you. Where I guess in a way, Ty feels like a newish player, right? Because he only really came on the second half of the year. But even with that mental gymnastic, it still feels like it's not enough if you're relying on an Eddy Davis or a Salo Olivas or anybody else. It's tough to see how that's enough to crack or have a stab at anything, even a potential second tournament or competition this year.
Yep, and that's a perfect segue into the last talking point. And yeah, we'll see how long we talk about this. I think, like I said at the beginning, a lot of fans are going to be happy to see this news that the Philadelphia Union will be participating in the 2025 Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. Did not play last year, obviously, because MLS and U.S. Soccer were beefing, and eventually they came to an agreement where, okay, instead of allowing 8 of our teams, we'll allow 16 teams plus 10 MLS Next Pro teams. And I think this is good for the league. I think this is good for U.S. Soccer. I think it's good for the U.S. Open Cup. I think it's good for just everybody involved, seeing that, okay, look, one, we all know how congested that schedule got in 2023, where the Union are playing Champions Cup, Leagues Cup, U.S. Open Cup. They lose 10-9 to Minnesota United on penalty kicks. And that whole travel schedule, I feel like they were in, at least is what I pictured it in my mind. I know they had to play Nashville away on the road. They had to play LA Galaxy on the road. But I feel like they went from Nashville to Minnesota to LA Galaxy. I mean, that is a difficult stretch right there. When you're playing in all these different competitions, you don't have enough players on your roster. The salary cap hurts, and yes, some people would argue, well, even without a salary cap, the Union aren't going to spend enough to have a decent enough roster to be in all these competitions. But regardless, I mean, seeing that the Philadelphia Union will participate in the 2025 Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup, that is huge. And Ernst Tanner did kind of spill the beans, and we'll play the clip here. If you people were living under a rock back in November, this is your question, Jose, asking about the competitions, what the ideal roster size would be. And Ernst Tanner lets it out of the bag that, hey, look, not only are we not playing in CONCACAF Champions Cup, but we aren't playing in Leagues Cup either.
Because we all know we don't play the Champions Cup, but we are also out of Leagues Cup. And I think it's even a positive for us in this moment, as I know that our fans don't overly love our Leagues Cup, but we are definitely not getting so many midweek games and have more time to really focus on training and development. And that's the positive note.
Yeah, and so you heard it there, not as many midweek games. But if you look at it, so the Union will open U.S. Open Cup play on the 4th round, or round of 32, whatever you want to call it, which takes place during May 6th, May 7th. And you came out, Jose, and put the tweet out a little bit later on social media and looked at the Union schedule. And so the Union will be playing a very, very crowded May schedule. On May 3rd, they will be away in Montreal. May 10th, they will play at home against Columbus. May 14th, at home against LA Galaxy. Away May 17th in Atlanta. Back at home May 24th against Inter Miami. And then away in Toronto on the 28th. Away on May 31st. And so if the Union do progress out of the round of 32, they would then turn their attention to the round of 16, which again could maybe not be as crowded as years past because the Union play in Nashville on July 5th. So a July 4th weekend in Nashville, back-to-back July 4th weekends where the Union aren't home. Chicago last year, Nashville this year. And then the quarterfinals is 8-9 for Open Cup. And then they have the New York Red Bulls on July 12th. Then you got to go all the way to September and /October where it's Vancouver. Then it's the semifinals, the 16th through 17th for the Open Cup. DC United away in September 27th. And then the U.S. Open Cup final would be on October 1st. And then they would be home to New York City on October 4th. So, I mean, it's a crowded schedule there in May. And I think a lot of fans really, really happy that the U.S. Open Cup's coming back. And the way that all this is going to go happen, and it starts with, MLS putting teams in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, teams playing in the Leagues Cup, and then the teams that aren't playing in Leagues Cup CONCACAF Champions Cup. If you're playing in that, you're not playing in the U.S. Open Cup at all, but teams that are playing in Leagues Cup can still participate in U.S. Open Cup. And since the Union did not qualify or they weren't ranked high enough to be in Leagues Cup because Leagues Cup took the top 9 teams from each conference, I believe it was. Union obviously, shockingly, did not finish in the top 9 in the Eastern Conference, so they didn't qualify for the Leagues Cup. And Ernst Tanner said it there. Fans would be so happy. No Leagues Cup. Yes, let's go. But you do get U.S. Open Cup.
Am I crazy? Round of 32, round of 16, quarterfinals, semifinals, final, right?
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I thought I had a typo, but it actually is true where they play on the 3rd against Montreal, then the U.S. Open Cup game that they are automatically in for.
Yep.
During that 5 through 7?
6 through 7. And the Union will host too, by the way.
Yes.
I didn't have that.
Yeah. So they will host. So if they progress, then they have a game May 20th or the 21st.
Okay. Well. So there was okay.
Yeah. That's the round of 16, making it even more crowded.
Yeah.
And then everything else you added where, fast forward to July. If they were to make it to the quarterfinal, they play between Nashville on the 5th and Red Bulls on the 12th, which is God knows where they have to travel for that. And then great. What a great problem, right? With winning and competing and progressing in tournaments comes more games, and maybe you take those more seriously, right? You have the semifinal squeezed between Vancouver on September 13 and
that's an away game too, by the way, in Vancouver,
which is obviously the other side of the continent, countries, but I consider it a continent because it's so freaking big. And then the final 3 days before playing New York City. And none of this, Todd, is taking into account the international windows that are happening where there are going to be CONCACAF games happening. There's going to be European games happening where these nations may be pushing and pulling to get players. Now, is Gastag out of contention? I don't know, maybe. But you think about Andre Blake, right? He's still a key piece of that Jamaican team. So there's just so much happening that makes this so difficult to I'm happy that it's happening, but also if the idea was to relieve congestion, oh man, this added a lot. Should they progress? And obviously I'm skipping 17 steps talking about this. But I good. When's the last time the Union hosted a
2018
U.S. Open Cup game? It's been a long time.
2018 Chicago Fire.
2018 Chicago Fire. So yeah, it's gosh, I guess we don't know who it'll be just fascinating. And also the through lines of, gosh, I know we joke about it a lot, but the tangled web that is the Philadelphia Union network, and who with a Philadelphia Union connection will be coming to Subaru Park, or who the Union are going to go see for the next round if they make it, that type of thing. And how do they approach it, right? Because what squad's going to show up after playing against Montreal for that first round game? Is it going to be the homegrown squad? You may as well have thrown MLS Next Pro into it at that point, right? So What do you do? Who do you play? I'm not sure. So I wish him luck. I also can't help but wonder if stepping away from Leagues Cup, not being in CONCACAF Champions Cup with those really good teams of 2022, 2021, 2023, if those teams would have actually crossed the finish line at one of these tournaments that they were so close to holding silverware. It makes me wonder. I don't know if it makes you wonder or anybody in the chat, but I would think that only focusing on 2 competitions against competing on 4, I guess 4 was the max, really.
4,
competing at 4 at the same time probably would have done wonders for a Glesnes and his hernia, right? So I don't know. It's hindsight's 2020, and we'll never know. That's a different universe.
Yeah, and with you talking there, it was actually making me think, because we knew what Jim Curtin's thoughts were in the Open Cup. He always wanted to go for it. I mean, we saw the Union reach 3 finals in the U.S. Open Cup. Jim Curtin, all 3 times, right, with the Philadelphia Union, reached it, won it as a player. And so, it's a competition that was near and dear to his heart. And maybe this is worth a question to Bradley Carnell. Maybe not at the moment, maybe, later down the line, how does he feel about the U.S. Open Cup? Is this a competition that he feels like, he wants to go for? He wants to, put his best players out there. You bring up a good point with that Montreal game. You come away from Montreal and, who do you play your starters? Do you play the starters against Montreal? Do you play them against whoever you play in the U.S. Open Cup? Because then you got to look at Columbus Crew coming to town 3 or 4 days later. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting schedule for the Union, and not a ton of midweek games like it was in the past. But regardless, it's a competition that I think this fan base still wants to win. I think any trophy this fan base will take. And you bring up a good point where, maybe if this kind of format was going on in years prior, that probably would have done the Philadelphia Union wonders. And the fact of the matter is it isn't. And one thing I do think that's interesting from the press release, MLS came out and said that this format will stay in play for the 2025 and 2026 season. And then come 2027, they will reevaluate. Did they put all their teams in the competition? Did they go with more teams? But, regardless, to see more participation from MLS clubs in the U.S. Open Cup, I think this is huge. And hopefully, we see upsets and, there's an opportunity. I think, if you're a player that's playing in USL, USL1, a semi-professional team, this is an opportunity for you to get your name out there for a potential contract with one of these big teams if you show well enough. So, I think that's why fans love this competition, is because of the upsets, for the opportunities that it brings. And, you look at the pay aspect for the players, players aren't going to complain about extra money. So a lot of factors into this. And I do think MLS takes a lot of heat. They get a lot of a stick from fans, but this is a situation where I think, fans can say, okay, look, if we're not competing in CONCACAF Champions Cup because we didn't qualify for it, if we didn't qualify for Leagues Cup, which I think a lot of fans would say, just get rid of that competition altogether and put every single team in the Open Cup. Maybe that happens down the line. Who knows? But the thing that we do know is the next 2 years, this will be the schedule for the U.S. Open Cup. And we'll see if the Union go for a run on this again. Do they reach a final? Is this the only opportunity to win a final? How does Bradley Carnell feel about this competition? So a lot of questions. And I think fans around MLS, I think Union fans could be happy to see this team once again back in the U.S. Open Cup.
Yeah, you do bring up a good point, and I do wonder, just in my head, thinking about page whatever it is, something with a 9, I think, and a 0, but like in the CBA, like all of these players at the Union are not getting the Leagues Cup bonus per match, which was 100 for showing up, and then I think it was 100 for showing up for playing, and an additional 50 if they won, and then you multiply that times however many times they would win. None of these players are getting that bonus, so technically they will be making less money than they did the year prior, just because U.S. Open Cup. I don't know what they make per win, but they obviously get their normal appearance fee. Leagues Cup was special for those players because, and Jim was not shy. Players were not shy about it too. Like, it was a huge moneymaker for them, right? To have whatever, make it to the final and you multiply 150 times 7 or 8 games, whatever it was, like divide that by all the players and sure other staff would get it and whatnot. Like, it was still a substantial amount of money for the likes of Jeremy Raffanello or Andrew Rick, who's on a league minimum, right? And some of these other youngsters who are suddenly getting a bonus that's 30% their salary. Like, that's amazing. So I think about that side a little bit in my brain. So I got to do some more digging to fully understand. And I think I know the right person and the right, unfortunately, sometimes the most vocal crowd to go and ask about these questions. But I should also be careful with what I ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the U.S. Open Cup. I'm glad that we delayed doing the podcast today because then I feel like we would have been texting each other like, well, got to go ahead and do another podcast. So we'll see. Maybe more news comes out during the week, maybe some signings. I know, Mike, you're pretty vocal right now saying you don't believe signings are coming and it's the end of the world for the Philadelphia Union and they're just going to live and die with homegrown players. But I'm a little bit more optimistic. I do believe signings are coming, even though I understand that trust has been lost. This fan base, some people in it don't trust the front office, don't trust Ernst Tenner. Totally get it. But I do think there's a lot of time left and we will see what happens. I do not think this is the roster that the Union start with, though, come February 22nd against Orlando City. Jose, anything else from you?
No, just a huge thank you for having me, Todd. I always appreciate it. It feels second nature at this point to just text me like, yeah, you want to talk on the mic? It's like, yeah, all right, let's do it. I too, Todd, though, to get back to the Union quick, I don't think that this is even the roster that goes to Florida. Frankly, I can't, or this isn't the roster that presents itself on February 7th. I think there's probably a lot that's percolating at Union HQ and figuring out players, et cetera, and maybe pushing players out too to clean up the roster a little bit and make some space. So, yeah, Michael's comment's actually very good. He caught that. Like, we'll have more for you when we get back from Florida. I think these 2 games was a big assessment period for Bradley and for Mitch actually as well to sort of, make a decision of who's staying in this roster and who's just maybe going to be an off-roster homegrown chilling with Union 2 for the entirety of the season. So best of luck to the players and hooray, new media guideline policies that we got to read through.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Why'd you have to bring that up? But where can people find you on social media, Jose?
You all can find me on Twitter at Jose R. Nuñez 91. I also have my Substack pinned there. Mike Barrera and Dave Miller and myself will get back together to start restart AAT sports for the 2025 league season. We'll try to find a date and find the right rhythm to keep that going. So we're excited that the season's kicking off soon. It feels like February 22nd so far away, but it really is not that far away when you think about how fast and things move with the Union.
Yeah, and I do have to say, Jose, before I do my whole spiel, I appreciate you, linking this to your Twitter, bringing 200 plus of your followers to check out the live stream. So everybody that's here because of Jose, thank you guys. Hopefully you guys come back next time that we do this. And Jose, Mike, and Dave do a fantastic job with AAT Sports. And hopefully we can continue to do our post-game live shows on Twitter that we've done a good amount of time last year. A lot of people in the comment section enjoyed those because, again, there's a lot that I think this fan base wants that the club could potentially do that seems like the bare minimum. And, giving live streams during the preseason, during a post-game show, it's little stuff that fans crave for. And so very thankful for the guys at AAT Sports for allowing me to do those post-game shows, and somebody like Jose to go out here and find streams for all of us sickos that want to watch the Philadelphia Union during the off season. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. Make sure you check out the YouTube channel. We are live on YouTube as we are on Facebook and Twitter. But the YouTube channel is youtube.com/freekickpod, where I do goals breakdown videos, where I do these lives. And I love seeing your guys' comments coming in on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So keep them coming. Keep coming back, guys, for more. And the Substack, where, you know, you can find all that stuff, plus my writing, thefreekick.substack.com. This did not go as long as I thought it would, Jose, which is a good thing for us, because that means I won't be staying up too late editing this for all you guys that are listening to it on the podcast feed. So with that said, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.